You wanted some more prop content? Well, here, have some prop content. Let's take a look at the J5N1, a Japanese interceptor towards the top end of the prop tiers. During World War II, the Japanese developed a respectable variety of twin-engine fighter designs that were arguably the most successful twin-engine fighters of the entire war. When the war started to turn against Japan, a requirement was issued for a high-altitude interceptor with an ambitious target speed of 660 kilometers an hour and the ability to attack enemy bombers at any altitude, no matter how high. Work began, and the Nakajima Company submitted the J5N based on the earlier J1N. The design used large, four-bladed propellers, heavy cannon armament, and high-powered engines. At least, that was the plan. The design was originally intended to use the Homare 21 engine at about 2,000 horsepower, but the production quality varied significantly from one batch of engines to the next, and the overall power output of the Homare never quite hit its design goals. As a result, the J5N1 only achieved about 80% of its target speeds. When B-29 raids started hitting the Japanese home islands, development of a high-altitude interceptor suddenly gained a serious sense of urgency, and the J5N was rushed to completion. The final design was designated J5N1, and 6 prototypes were constructed. Early in 1945, the project was closed and priority was shifted to other aircraft designs that were already in production or had more overall potential, mostly due to the fact that the J5N design was never going to reach its design goals without a more reliable source of engines. What we get in War Thunder is an aircraft a little closer to the designed performance of the J5N1 than what is known of the actual performance achieved by the prototypes. In short, a highly capable bomber interceptor. For weapons, the J5N1 carries both 20mm and 30mm cannons. The 20mm cannons have 700 rounds of ammunition, while the 30mm only get 120. If you fire all your cannons with the same trigger, you're going to deplete your 30mm rounds significantly faster than the 20mm rounds, so that's something to keep in mind. The guns have a pretty standard selection of ammo belts, but are notably lacking a dedicated anti-air belt, though really all of the ammo selections are pretty good at taking out air targets. The guns are all mounted on the center line right in the nose, so convergence isn't especially important unless you're also using vertical targeting. And if you don't know what that is, how the hell did you get this far into the tech tree? Anyway, the J5N1 suffers the MiG-15 problem. The 2 different caliber guns have significantly different ballistics, and it can be a little weird to aim them. Personally, I like to shoot my cannons a little sloppy in prop fighters. I'm old, so my aim isn't as laser-focused as it used to be, and I tend to have better luck just filling a box of sky with ammo than trying to do pinpoint accurate precision shooting. So the cannons on this plane felt great to me. The burst mass is over 7 kilograms, and anything you actually connect 30mm shots into is basically toast. No kidding, this thing can rip bombers apart in just one hit. The plane doesn't get any external weapons or anything, but that shouldn't be a surprise considering that this is a dedicated bomber interceptor and not a fighter bomber or anything. The flight performance of the J5N1 is pretty typical of twin-engined aircraft in this class. It has slightly above average speed and rate of climb, with slightly below average maneuverability. It's at BR 5.3 and can catch most targets at high altitude, but it might take a long pursuit. As with most other props, acceleration towards the higher end of the power curve isn't great, but the plane does have a solid top-end speed for this BR. The turn performance is a bit lackluster. You can hang in there with other twin-engine planes, and you won't have much trouble coming around on bombers, but most single-engine fighters are gonna steal your lunch money. The only time I was able to get kills on single-engine fighters in this plane at least in realistic battles, were when the enemy pilot made severe mistakes in his air combat maneuvering. In arcade battles, everything flies a bit better, and while single-engine planes will still outturn the J5N1, it can hang in a furball better than a lot of the other twin-engined interceptors can. Flying this plane into Air RB sets you up for success. It's classed as an interceptor, so it gets an air spawn, which allows it to use its good climb rate and to get in on enemy bombers without much trouble. If you use your speed over your angle to climb and maintain a good energy state so that you're not just hanging in the air when you reach the bombers, you'll have a little bit more flexibility if you miss your shots on the first pass or something. As mentioned before, you can take down most bombers in just 1 or 2 hits a lot of the time, and if you're lucky enough to intercept a formation of 2 or 3 bombers, try to resist the urge to maniacally laugh like a supervillain as you shoot them all down. I don't recommend trying to use this plane against ground targets in RB, as even the armor-piercing ammo belts didn't really feel as effective as I'd like, and while they were able to get hits on pillboxes, actually destroying them was difficult. Plus, the lower you are, the easier it is for some single-engine turn fighter to dive in on you. In arcade battles, anything goes, and depending on how the match develops, you can probably get a few kills per spawn if you're careful with your flying. The J5N1 can't take much punishment though, and if you're getting targeted by multiple opponents, you have absolutely zero margin for error. Similar thoughts about ground targets as with realistic battles. If you fly this out as a ground pounder in an arcade, you're gonna get let down. Try to limit ground pounding to targets of opportunity only. Visually, this is a great looking plane, at least to me anyway. It's got mature aerodynamics for a prop aircraft, compact engines, and the usual Japanese navy green paint job. There aren't any custom skins available, so you have to make do with decals and such. Landing the J5N1 is basic. It can drop landing flaps at around 275 kilometers an hour and drop gear a little bit closer to 300. It's a tail dragger, so make sure you pitch up as you brake to avoid prop strikes. You've probably figured out how to land tail draggers by this point in the tech tree, but if you're having trouble, just go practice a few times in a test flight. The cockpit is solid, with good visibility and sensible instrument layout, but I'll admit that I had much more trouble aiming the guns flying in VR than I did flying in third-person view on my monitor. That isn't normally a problem for me, but I just never got the hang of the ballistics from the cockpit view. To close out on the Nakajima J5N1, this plane punches hard, and its cannons can usually destroy anything you can hit. It has reasonably good rate of climb and speed, which can absolutely matter at higher altitudes. And it gets the interceptor spawn in Air RB, which is always a solid advantage. However, its maneuverability in a dogfight can be a bit lacking, it isn't especially well suited for ground attack, and it's crazy expensive to repair in RB. Over 15,000 silver lions. The final verdict on the J5N1 is that this is a highly capable interceptor that can clear the skies of enemy bombers, but it's vulnerable to interception itself by enemy fighters, so it ends up being a bit of a glass cannon. As always, thanks for watching.